So, if you didn't hear, the Louis Theroux documentary on America First came out. It was by the BBC. You can watch it here on BitChute by a guy named Base Documentaries, and it came out in February 15th, so it's pretty recent upload. You can watch it there. And there's been a lot of reactions coming from different parts of the dissident rights. So here I want to see the Alex McNabb take. So and he posted this on Telegram. I don't know if he talked about it on the show, but let's see what he has to say. So, I watched the first hour of this apparently two-part documentary on America First by Louis Theroux. Nick Fuentes came off pretty strong. He's clearly got the political acumen and instincts to be a very successful right-wing grifter slash politician for decades to come. Theroux's attempts to engage in just wow moral framing flat, fall completely flat, and our fearless British journal ends up just looking like some stuffy, pretentious, out of touch establishment twat. On the other hand, Beardson proves to be an enormous liability, and his own insecurity and cowardice allows Theroux to easily paint him as a vicious little pipsqueak afflicted with a terminal case of little man syndrome. So, I don't want to go into spoilers or anything, but actually, well, this part is kind of important. So Beardson, I watched the entire documentary, by the way, in preparation for this video. So Beardson, he got a really, really bad time in the documentary. He was made to look like this really cringy, short, insecure kind of guy. Louis confronted him about like doing a hail, like a Roman salute, and he also confronted him about like this joke I think he made, or I don't know what it was, about like raping Brittany Venti. And funnily enough, he actually went to Brittany Venti's house and actually asked her about it, and he made this scene. The editing of this documentary, it was like amazing. It was like a very high production values. It was obviously designed to really make America First look bad, and I think that when it comes to Beardson, they really did a number on him. So if you watch the documentary, the Beardson section, that's pretty brutal. But Fuentes and Baked Alaska, I don't think they did a really good job, like showing them, oh, they're like scary white nationalists or something. In a way, it actually just gave them more exposure. So anyway, let's continue. Between calling himself a troll before throwing a temper tantrum and then getting his rape threats replayed by Brittany Venti, Beardson is an easy man to hate. And yeah, I agree. Baked Alaska comes off as an opportunistic provocateur and utterly unserious troll, in other words, exactly who he really is. I don't know, overall it made me rethink my perceptions of Fuentes, particularly since I know just how dumb and easily misled American right-wingers are. This guy could indeed become a permanent fixture in our insanely dysfunctional political landscape. So this, I think, is Borzoi's take. I don't think he watched the full documentary, but he did say, I caught part of the Theroux documentary, and I suspect some of you are coping. I don't know what he's saying here. What are we coping about? I don't think this documentary moved the needle in any direction. Libtards who hate this milieu still hate this milieu. Conservatives who have largely blackballed these people away anyway, except to wrangle them for election meme energy, aren't going to see it. TV race who caught it all are still going to be TV race. By the way, in case if you don't know, TV race is the TRS term for people who just like watch CNN, Fox News. They basically watch whatever's on television. So that's like what this term means. Let's continue. There might be some middle American radical types that weren't aware of the milieu who are now curious about it, maybe, but it didn't embarrass them any more than what their stream antics that have already ghettoized them to alt tech hasn't already done. It isn't going to have an impact on anyone given the state of country and its division. When you scream about ma opducts to try and own Nick, all it tells me is the successful 2017 operation utterly broke your brain. So I agree with this part of the Borzoi take, that it didn't like hurt them in any way. Like, see, I don't think that people really care nowadays too much about this kind of thing. People already know that, quote unquote, the alt-right, whatever it is nowadays, it's basically been relegated to the backwaters of the internet. It's like you can't see it unless you go to specific websites, you go to specific Telegram channels. Like, most people don't even know what Telegram is, like most normies. So yeah, I think he's completely right here. The damage that AF has gotten, it's largely self-inflicted. This documentary, I don't think it exacerbated it or anything. Uh, okay, let's see what else McNabb has to say. People need to stop coping and just acknowledge that Nick Fuentes' combination of fast, talking verbal agility, lack of any principles, and good instincts for finding a successful grift particularly ensure he'll be a highly popular American politician. But that a person is lying, dishonest, grifting, F-slur with bad optics. So is Trump. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so this is Keith Wood's thoughts on the Theroux documentary. So let's see what he has to say. Nick came off looking extremely well. Theroux made a mistake in trying to portray him as a dangerous white nationalist instead of trying to frame him as a tragic slash laughable figure. The way he clipped Nick's AFPAC speech made it seem epic. Trying to portray Nick as the next Mussolini made for powerful propaganda, and all the clips from his show he used was like a best of compilation. Okay. Because he went for the most outrageous clips, they ended up being hilarious in the context of splicing them with the ominous music. Nick took the right response in stating his beliefs in a very direct and apologetic way. The wow, just wow response by Louis made him seem more authentic. I think he's talking about Nick. The way it made Nick look more authentic, and it made Louis look like a pretentious, like uppity, moralizing kind of guy. Which I think there was a time and a place for that kind of journalism, but it's. I mean, look at what we are, where we are now, dude. Okay, the strength of Theroux used to be that he built a rapport with the subjects of his documentaries and humanized them, thereby making their ostensibly dangerous beliefs seem like the result of a fearful slash damaged mindset, in a way satisfying to his libtard audience. Now that he feels more of an obligation to not seem sympathetic to people considered extremists, the documentaries didn't hit the same. And when he takes his preachy attitude to young guys that are clearly having fun in what they're doing, he just comes off as condescending and out of touch. Completely agree. People saying it will hurt Fuentes are wrong. All the people that see him as a hateful bigot after this were going to think that regardless. It's a little bit of upside and a lot of exposure for very little downside, especially now that he's already deplatformed off everything. Big did fine because he seemed like he was having fun against an intrusive British libtard trying to lecture him about the consequences of his fun and the power dynamics of race. Pearson came out looking the worst. Again, it seems to be like universally agreed upon. Like if you're a Beardson fan, this documentary is a big L for you. Beardson came out looking the worst, which perhaps highlights the problem in that the AF approach requires someone as agile and charismatic as Fuentes to make it hit right. It can too easily lose its punch as it trickles down. Thought too much time was spent denying the white nationalist argument, especially when almost everyone watching will see the defense as just an admission of guilt anyway. Would have been better to just step over it and use the screen time to put Theroux on the defensive as an avatar for the media and challenge him on why he has such an issue, specifically with white people asserting themselves in their homelands. Overall, went as well as it could have and shows how out of touch the media class is so weak in combating ideas on the right. All we had was vague condemnation and condescension, which is a dynamic that doesn't work against people who are unapologetic and look like they're having fun. So that's the dissident right take on the documentary. So my personal, see, I agree with Borzoi. I agree with different parts of their analysis. So when it comes to Borzoi, I agree that politically this documentary is meaningless. It won't have any impact. It won't have any massive effect on AF. All it did was give them a little bit of extra exposure, and British people, I mean, I'm pretty sure there was like a mini Groiper war done by like a patriotic alternative Mark Collett guys back in like 2019. And I think British people, they're already familiar with the concept of Groipers, and I think they already know who kind of Fuentes is because of that. I mean, there were British guys who call themselves Groipers who were calling into Majid Nawaz's show. They were calling into like big call-in shows in British radio, and they were asking like, tough questions about demographics and stuff. So I think they'll be familiar with this. I mean, they definitely might have looked up the term Groiper, even if they don't know too much about, the specific arguments. So, yeah, it's just more positive exposure for Fuentes. It's uh, it's probably, I would say, yeah, both Baked Alaska and Fuentes, they didn't like they're not gonna suffer too much from this. Beardson, his reputation definitely took a decline. Like if in this documentary, if he just clipped the Beardson parts and make would have made like a takedown on Beardson, that would have been much more devastating to AF as a whole than splicing it with other AF figures here and there and some random people or whatnot. So yeah, Beardson fans, they took a big L in this documentary. Fuentes Baked, I think they came off looking fine. Baked Alaska, I think, yeah, he did come off as kind of disingenuous. He worked for BuzzFeed, then he was at Charlottesville, then he renounced that, and then he came back to, America First. So yeah, overall, the documentary was fun to watch. It was well edited. Don't pay for it. Don't go on like a Netflix or something. Just watch it on BitChute or something.